The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at her threadbare shawl as Eliza stumbled through the rugged Arizona territory. She was alone, utterly alone, miles from anything resembling civilization, and the searing pain in her belly announced an arrival that was tragically premature. What happened next on that desolate trail would defy all expectations, forever altering the course of her life and the destiny of a quiet Apache warrior. Imagine the terror, the desperation, as the first contraction hit with the force of a mule kick. Eliza, a woman of genteel upbringing, found herself on her knees, clawing at the dust, with only the vast, indifferent desert as her witness. Every breath was a gasp. Every muscle screamed in protest. This was not the birthing she had envisioned, surrounded by family, safe in a warm bed. This was raw, primal survival against impossible odds. Then, a shadow fell across her. Not the shadow of a cloud, but a figure on horseback, silent as the desert night. Her heart leaped into her throat. Was this the end? A lone woman, vulnerable, giving birth in the wilderness, encountering an Apache warrior. Every story she'd ever heard painted a picture of fear, of conflict. Yet, the man dismounted, his movements deliberate, his gaze calm. He was imposing, formidable, but something in his eyes spoke not of menace, but of an unexpected, profound stillness. He was called Chaitin, a name meaning falcon among his people, and what he did next was unthinkable. He didn't ride by. He didn't leave her to her fate. Instead, he knelt, his strong hands surprisingly gentle, offering a lifeline in the most desperate moment of her life. He stayed, a silent guardian in a world that had abandoned her. But this wasn't just an act of compassion. It was the seed of a connection so deep, so forbidden, it would challenge everything they knew about love, loyalty, and the stark divisions between their worlds. What secret sorrow did this quiet warrior carry that compelled him to aid a stranger? And what would happen when Eliza, a white woman with a newborn, found herself bound by fate to a man from a different world, a world steeped in ancient traditions and simmering tensions? Their story is one of impossible choices, of defying the very fabric of society, and of a love that bloomed in the harshest of landscapes, proving that sometimes the most unexpected encounters are the ones that stay forever. The wind, a relentless sculptor of the rugged Arizona landscape, whipped dust devils across the parched earth, mirroring the turmoil in Eliza's heart. She clutched the faded shawl tighter around her shoulders, less for warmth than for comfort against the biting chill of loneliness. For 2 weeks, Eliza had endured the relentless journey, her only companion, the rattling wagon and the growing ache in her belly. Each jolt over the unforgiving terrain sent a fresh wave of nausea through her, a stark reminder of the life burgeoning within. She was alone, utterly and finally alone, with only the distant promise of a new life in the sprawling territories as her guide. Her family, rigid in their traditions, had cast her out the moment her condition became undeniable. A hushed, tearful confrontation with her stern father, Silas, had sealed her fate. "You have shamed this family, Eliza," he declared, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "There is no place for you here." Her mother, usually her fiercest defender, had merely wept, unable to defy Silas's decree. The memory still stung, a festering wound that no amount of travel could heal. She remembered the false hope that had briefly flickered when her Aunt Clara, a distant relative, had offered a sanctuary in a remote settlement. Clara's letters had painted a picture of quiet solace, a place where Eliza and her unborn child could find acceptance. That hope now felt like a cruel mirage, shimmering just out of reach. As the sun dipped below the jagged peaks, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and bruised purple, Eliza spotted a lone rider silhouetted against the dying light. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of both fear and a desperate, illogical hope. The rider, a figure of quiet strength, seemed to emerge from the very silence of the desert. He was Apache, she noted, his stoic profile etched against the vivid sky. He rode with an effortless grace, his gaze sweeping the horizon, then settling on her struggling wagon. A sudden, sharp pain lanced through Eliza, stealing her breath. She gasped, doubling over, the reins slipping from her numb fingers. The wagon lurched, the horses whinnying in alarm. The pain intensified, a tightening vice around her middle, unmistakable in its intent. Panic, cold and absolute, seized her. She was miles from anywhere, her aunt's settlement still a day's journey away. This was happening now, here on this desolate trail. The Apache rider, as if sensing her distress, spurred his horse forward. He dismounted with an economy of movement, his dark eyes assessing her with an unnerving intensity. "Are you in trouble, woman?" he asked, his voice low and steady, a surprising contrast to the wildness of the land. Eliza could only nod, clutching her belly, another wave of agony washing over her. The false hope of reaching her aunt's safe haven had vanished, replaced by the stark reality of her situation. She was giving birth, alone, on a rocky trail, and the only soul within miles was this quiet stranger. A guttural cry tore from Eliza's throat, raw and involuntary, as another contraction seized her. The world narrowed to a searing point of pain, the dusty trail blurring before her eyes. The Apache dismounted with an economy of movement, his dark eyes assessing her with an unnerving calm. He did not speak, but his presence was a solid, unwavering anchor in her swirling agony. He merely knelt beside her, his gaze unwavering, a silent question in his deep-set eyes. Eliza gasped, clutching at the dirt, her fingers jigging into the loose earth. The false hope of Aunt Clara's sanctuary, of a quiet haven for her and her child, now felt like a cruel taunt. That distant promise had propelled her forward through weeks of arduous travel, a beacon in the darkness of her family's rejection. Silas's harsh words, "There is no place for you here," echoed in her mind, a cold counterpoint to the burning heat now consuming her body. She had envisioned a gentle welcome, soft hands, and comforting words, not this stark, brutal reality. The Apache's quiet strength, however, offered a different kind of solace, an unbidden, unexpected comfort in the face of her overwhelming vulnerability. He moved with a quiet efficiency that surprised her. Without a word, he unrolled a thick, woven blanket from his saddlebag, spreading it carefully on the ground beside her. His hands, strong and calloused, then helped her to lie down, his touch surprisingly gentle. The pain surged again, sharper this time, and Eliza cried out, her voice thin and reedy. It's coming," she choked out, her breath ragged. He nodded, his expression unreadable, but a flicker of understanding passed through his eyes. He gathered some dry brush, quickly starting a small, smokeless fire a short distance away, its warmth a welcome relief against the chilling desert air. Eliza's mind, despite the torment, tried to make sense of this improbable encounter. Here, in the desolate wilderness, a man from a world so different from her own was tending to her most intimate, vulnerable moment. She had heard stories of the Apache, tales of fierce warriors and stoic silence, but never of such quiet compassion. The sun had fully vanished now, leaving the sky a canvas of deep indigo, dotted with the first hesitant stars. The firelight danced, casting long, shifting shadows that seemed to magnify her isolation, even with the stranger so near. Hours blurred into an eternity of pain and primal instinct. Eliza pushed, gritted her teeth, and bore down, every fiber of her being focused on the singular, monumental task. The Apache remained, a silent sentinel, occasionally offering a small gourd of water, his presence a steady, reassuring weight. Just when she thought she could bear no more, when exhaustion threatened to consume her entirely, a new sensation rippled through her. A final, desperate push, a tearing agony, and then a sound. A tiny, fragile cry that pierced the vast silence of the desert night. Eliza collapsed back, gasping, tears streaming down her face, not from pain, but from an overwhelming rush of relief and a fierce, protective love. Her baby was here. The fragile cry echoed in Eliza's ears, a sound more precious than any melody. She fumbled in the darkness, her hands finding the tiny, warm bundle, A son. He was so small, so perfect, a beacon in the overwhelming night. She pressed him close, marveling at the miracle, the sharp edges of her pain softening into a profound tenderness. The wind still howled, but its sea seemed distant, muted by the powerful new presence beside her. She had done it against all odds, alone on the unforgiving trail. As the first slivers of dawn painted the eastern sky, Eliza studied her son. He had a shock of dark hair and tiny, grasping fingers. A fierce protectiveness surged through her, stronger than any fear she had ever known. She knew she had to find shelter, warmth, and sustenance, not just for herself, but for him. The harsh reality of their situation pressed in. Her supplies were meager, her strength waning. The thought of continuing the journey alone with a newborn was daunting, a mountain she wasn't sure she could climb. A distant sound caught her attention, the rhythmic thud of hooves on hard earth. Her heart seized with a familiar dread, then a flicker of desperate hope. It was the Apache rider. He appeared as if from a dream, his silhouette growing larger against the rising sun. He dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate, his dark eyes taking in the scene before him. Eliza, pale and exhausted, cradling a newborn. His gaze was unreadable, yet held no hint of the hostility she had been taught to expect. He simply stood, a silent, imposing figure. "He's here," Eliza whispered, her voice hoarse, a mix of exhaustion and wonder. The rider nodded, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. He knelt, not too close, but close enough for Eliza to feel a strange sense of calm emanating from him. He offered her a water skin, then a piece of dried meat, his gestures gentle, respectful. Eliza ate ravenously, the food a lifeline, the water a balm. He watched her, then glanced at the baby, a faint curiosity in his eyes. He spoke then, his voice a low rumble. Words Eliza didn't understand, but the tone was reassuring. He pointed to the east, then made a sweeping motion with his hand, indicating distance. He then pointed to himself, then to her and the baby, and finally to the direction he had indicated. Eliza understood. He was offering to guide them. A wave of relief washed over her, so profound it nearly brought fresh tears. This quiet Apache, a stranger, was offering a chance at survival. Just as a sliver of genuine hope began to bloom, a new sound cut through the morning air, the unmistakable jingle of wagon wheels approaching from the opposite direction. Eliza's stomach clenched. She recognized the pattern of the wheels, the distinctive creak. It was her father's wagon. He had found her. Panic flared, cold and sharp. The Apache rider, sensing the shift in her demeanor, turned, his hand instinctively going to the knife at his belt. Eliza knew, with chilling certainty, that this moment would change everything. The creak grew louder, a mournful lament carried on the wind, and Eliza's breath hitched in her throat. Her father's wagon, unmistakable in its weathered familiarity, appeared over the rise, drawn by two weary bay horses. Silas sat ramrod straight on the driver's seat, his jaw set, his eyes scanning the horizon. Beside him, a figure she hadn't expected, her Aunt Clara, clutched a small satchel, her face etched with a mixture of fear and grim determination. Clara, the distant relative who had offered sanctuary, was now here, complicit in her father's pursuit. The betrayal stung, sharper than any desert thorn. Eliza instinctively stepped back, pressing herself against the rough bark of a juniper tree, trying to merge with the fading light. The Apache rider, whose name she still didn't know, remained still as a statue, his gaze fixed on the approaching wagon. His hand, no longer merely resting, now gripped the hilt of his knife. The silent tension between the two men, one a man of the land, the other a man of rigid tradition, crackled in the desert air. Silas reined in his horses a dozen yards away, the wagon grinding to a halt in a cloud of dust. His eyes, cold and unyielding, swept over Eliza, then landed on the Apache. "Eliza," he boomed, his voice echoing across the quiet expanse. "Get in the wagon." Now, Eliza didn't move. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drum against the impending confrontation. She looked from her father's unyielding face to the stoic profile of the Apache. He was her only hope, a silent guardian who had appeared from the vast emptiness. "I won't go," Eliza said, her voice trembling but firm. "There's nothing for me there." Silas dismounted, his movements stiff with age and anger. "You have made your bed, girl. You will lie in it. This savage has no place in our affairs." He gestured dismissively towards the Apache, a sneer twisting his lips. The Apache's eyes, dark and unreadable, narrowed almost imperceptibly. He took a single, deliberate step forward, his hand still on his knife. A low, guttural warning rumbled in his chest, a sound that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. Suddenly, Aunt Clara scrambled down from the wagon, her face pale. "Silas, wait!" she cried, her voice thin with desperation. She clutched her satchel tighter. "There's something you don't know." Her eyes darted towards Eliza, then to the Apache, a flicker of profound fear in their depths. Silas turned, his brow furrowed. "What foolishness is this, Clara?" "We have no time for your dramatics. It's not foolishness," Clara insisted, her voice rising. "Eliza, your mother, she sent me. She didn't want you to know, but she's gravely ill. She's been asking for you, Eliza. She's dying." The words hit Eliza like a physical blow. Her mother ill? Dying? The cruel mirage of false hope twisted into a devastating reality. This wasn't just about her future anymore. It was about her past, and a desperate, final plea from the woman who had always, in her own way, loved her. The wind howled, carrying with it the bitter taste of an impossible choice. Eliza stared at the rider, the Apache man whose quiet strength had somehow become a constant in her fractured world. Clara's words, she's dying, echoed in the vast silence, shattering the agile peace she had found, however briefly, in this desolate landscape. Her mother, the woman who had wept silently as Silas banished her, was now facing her end. A desperate, illogical hope had brought Eliza this far, but this news twisted it into a cruel, inescapable bind. The choice was no longer about survival in the wilderness. It was about a final, impossible reconciliation. "How?" Eliza whispered, her voice raw, barely audible above the wind's lament. "How do you know this?" The Apache, whose name she still didn't know, dismounted with fluid grace. He reached into a leather pouch at his side, producing a small, intricately carved wooden bird. "My people. We hear things. The wind carries whispers across the plains, even from the distant settlements." He offered the bird to her, its smooth surface cool against her trembling fingers. This was hers. "Your mother sent it with a traveler, a plea for you to return." Eliza clutched the bird, a wave of conflicting emotions washing over her. Anger at her father's unyielding pride, guilt for her own defiance, and a profound, aching love for the woman who, even in her final moments, thought of her. The false hope of a new beginning in the territories vanished, replaced by the stark reality of an ending she had to witness. "I have to go back," Eliza declared, her resolve hardening even as her heart ached. The thought of facing Silas again, of returning to the rigid world that had cast her out, filled her with dread. Yet, the alternative, a lifetime of regret, was far worse. The Apache nodded, his gaze steady, understanding. "The journey will be long and dangerous." Just then, a figure emerged from the sparse brush, a grizzled prospector Eliza had encountered a few days prior, his eyes glinting with an unsettling avarice. Well, what do we have here?" he drawled, his hand hovering near the pistol at his hip. "A lone woman and her companion. Looks like you found yourself a little treasure out here, Apache." Eliza's breath hitched. She had tried to avoid him, sensing his predatory intent. The prospector's eyes lingered on her swollen belly, then darted to the small, worn satchel she carried, containing the few valuables she had left. "Seems like you're carrying more than just a secret, little lady." A tense silence descended, broken only by the whistling wind. The Apache stepped forward, placing himself between Eliza and the prospector. His posture was calm, but there was an undeniable tension in his shoulders, a silent warning. The air crackled with unspoken threat. This was the moment. Eliza knew, with a chilling certainty, that her journey back would not be as simple as turning her wagon around. The choice to return had been made, but the path was fraught with peril, a test of her newfound strength and the quiet Apache's unwavering loyalty. Eliza's breath hitched as the silence stretched, thick with unspoken tension. The Apache, whose name she still did not know, dismounted with fluid grace, his eyes scanning the horizon, then settling on her. His face remained impassive, yet Eliza sensed a subtle shift, a readiness for what was to come. She glanced towards the distant lights of her family's homestead, a beacon of both longing and dread. This was it, the culmination of everything. The first sign of trouble arrived not as a sudden attack, but as a chilling absence of sound. The usual nocturnal chorus of crickets and coyotes had fallen silent, replaced by an unnatural stillness that pricked at Eliza's nerves. Then, a low, guttural growl echoed from the darkness, not animal, but human. Figures emerged from the deep shadows, 3 of them, their faces obscured by the dim light, but their intent clear in their menacing postures. They were not the usual trail bandits. There was a cold, deliberate malice in their approach. One of them stepped forward, a sneer twisting his lips as he saw Eliza. Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter," he drawled, his voice rough. Eliza recognized him instantly. Jedediah, a shiftless ranch hand her father had dismissed years ago for theft. His eyes glinted with a vengeful satisfaction. "Silas ain't gonna be happy to see you back, Eliza. Especially not with that." His gaze flicked to her swollen belly, then to the silent Apache. Before Eliza could respond, the Apache moved with astonishing speed. He was a blur of motion, drawing a knife from his belt in one seamless sweep. The confrontation was swift and brutal, a dance of shadows and steel. Eliza watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the Apache fought with a practiced ferocity she hadn't known he possessed. He moved like a phantom, deflecting blows, striking with precision. One of Jedediah's companions cried out, clutching his arm, then fell back into the darkness. Jedediah, realizing he was outmatched, lunged at Eliza, a desperate, cowardly attempt to gain an advantage. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh, pulling her towards him. A sharp pain shot through her, but Eliza did not cry out. Instead, a fierce surge of protective anger, unlike anything she had ever felt, coursed through her. She was no longer the frightened girl cast out by her family. She was a mother, and she would protect her child. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, Eliza twisted free, shoving Jedediah back with unexpected force. He stumbled, momentarily off balance. That brief opening was all the Apache needed. He moved in, disarming Jedediah with a swift, decisive motion. The fight was over as quickly as it began. Jedediah, defeated and humiliated, scrambled away with his remaining accomplice, disappearing into the night, leaving only the lingering scent of fear. The Apache turned to Eliza, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He reached out, his hand hovering near her arm where Jedediah had gripped her. Eliza met his gaze, no longer afraid, but filled with a profound gratitude and a dawning understanding. This quiet Apache, who had appeared owned the wilderness, had not just protected her. He had become her anchor. He had shown her a strength she never knew she had, and in doing so, had become a part of her story, forever entwined with her journey home. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Eliza felt truly, completely safe. The dust settled around Eliza and the Apache man, the tension of the past months finally dissipating into the vast western sky. Her gaze met his, a silent understanding passing between them, deeper than any words could convey. He had not just found her that day on the trail. He had found a purpose, and she, a sanctuary. The child, now a sturdy toddler, toddled between their legs, a living testament to their unlikely bond. Their life together on the edge of the reservation had not been without its challenges. The local townspeople, initially wary, had slowly come to accept the quiet Apache and the white woman who lived with him. It was a gradual thawing, a testament to their unwavering commitment to each other and their shared life. Yet, a shadow always lingered, the unresolved tension with Eliza's family back east. One crisp autumn morning, a rider approached their cabin, kicking up a plume of dust. Eliza's heart pounded as the figure dismounted, revealing her brother, Thomas. His face, etched with worry and years of unspoken grief, softened as his eyes fell upon her. A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of their past. "Eliza," he finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Father." "He's gone. He asked for you." A wave of sorrow washed over Eliza, a complex mix of regret and release. Her father, the man who had disowned her, had carried his own burdens. Thomas extended a hand, offering a faded photograph of their mother, her smile still radiant. "He never stopped loving you, Eliza. He just didn't know how to show it." The Apache man stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Eliza's shoulder. Thomas's gaze shifted, a flicker of surprise, then respect in his eyes. He saw not a savage, but a man who loved his sister fiercely. The confrontation Eliza had dreaded for so long dissolved into an unexpected moment of shared humanity. Eliza knew she couldn't return to her old life, but a bridge had been built. She embraced Thomas, a silent promise passing between them that their family, though fractured, could begin to heal. As Thomas rode away, a sense of peace settled over Eliza. She had faced the wilderness, embraced an unknown future, and found a love that transcended boundaries. Her journey had been arduous, but it had led her home, not to a place, but to a love that had truly stayed forever. The quiet Apache stood by her, his presence a constant, unwavering anchor in her extraordinary life.